At exactly 2:47 a.m. on April 3rd, 2017, a motion sensor triggered inside a two-story house in Spring Hill, Tennessee. The signal activated the home's security camera in the living room, one of several installed by a cautious mother named Melanie Duval. The grainy footage that followed is not for the faint of heart. You see a shadow pass through the frame. The lights are off. There's no sound, except a distant creak of a stair. Then the figure disappears. Less than 30 minutes later, Daniel Duval, his wife Melanie, and their two young children, Emma and Caleb, were all dead or murdered in their own home, with the cameras rolling. And somehow, 7 years later, not a single person has been arrested and no suspect. No weapon, no clear motive, just a recording that police can't explain. This is the story of a family that did everything right, locked their doors, installed cameras, and trusted the system. And still, they died. What really happened inside the Duval home that night? Why was the security footage mysteriously corrupted? And is it possible the killer was someone they knew? This isn't just a mystery, it's a case that may never see justice. Unless someone finally speaks up that you're watching True Crime Files gist. And this is the full, terrifying breakdown of the Duval family massacre. Stick around, because the final segment might change how you see this entire story. The Duval family, suburban safety, shattered. To understand how something this horrifying could happen in a place like Spring Hill, Tennessee, we have to start with the Duval family themselves. Daniel and Melanie Duval weren't famous. They weren't rich. They were just normal. Daniel was 42, a well-groomed, polite mortgage broker who co-owned a local office with his childhood best friend. His co-workers described him as borderline obsessive when it came to time. Always early, always crisp, always methodical. He wore button-downs even on the weekends. He mowed his lawn every Saturday at 8 a.m. without fail. Melanie, 39, was the soul of the family. She'd given up a career in education after their second child was born. She threw themed birthday parties. She baked muffins for her kids' classmates. She was on the PTA, volunteered at church, and never missed a parent-teacher meeting. On Instagram, she came across like someone out of a Hallmark film. Photos of her kids at soccer games, chore charts on the fridge, matching family Christmas pajamas. But beneath all that picture-perfect surface, there was a quiet edge of worry, the kind of worry that starts as an instinct and then becomes something you can't shake. Emma, their daughter, was 10 years old, soft-spoken, artistic, glued to her sketchbook. Caleb was 7, a baseball kid, bursting with energy. Together, the Duvals lived in a comfortable two-story home on Bluebird Lane, a tree-lined street where kids played barefoot and neighbors waved over white picket fences, the kind of place where nothing bad was ever supposed to happen, where people didn't even lock their doors. Until what happened to the Duvals. They were a church-going, God-fearing family. Their marriage wasn't perfect. No one's is, but friends never heard of violence, affairs, or threats. They had savings, good credit, 2 cars, a big backyard. On paper, they were the safest people in the safest neighborhood in one of the safest towns in Tennessee. When news broke that all 4 family members had been murdered inside their home, the community didn't just grieve, they panicked. Because if the Duvals weren't safe, who was? Small signs, big fears. The weeks before the killings, the murders didn't come out of nowhere. In the 3 weeks leading up to April 3rd, 2017, Melanie Duval had started doing something she'd never done before. She kept a notebook, not a journal, not a diary, a notebook. She titled the first page, "Things I'm Probably Imagining, but Want to Remember." Inside, she jotted down what she called oddities. The porch light burning out twice in 1 week that Emma's window found cracked open, even though no one remembered opening it. The feeling of being watched while folding laundry, the dog growling at nothing, staring toward the hallway. She wasn't paranoid. Not yet. But she was starting to pay attention. Melanie didn't tell her husband about the notebook, but she did mention something to her sister in a text message. It read, quote, "I don't want to scare Dan, but I swear someone was in our backyard last night. I checked the camera, but the footage glitched." Her sister replied, "What do you mean glitched?" Melanie wrote, "It froze." Then skipped ahead 22 minutes. Nothing in between. That was March 14th, exactly 20 days before the murders. Police report was filed. No neighbors reported anything strange, but Melanie kept writing in that notebook. A week later, Caleb, age 7, told his mom something that, at the time, she brushed off. He said, quote, "I saw someone in my closet. He smiled at me. He said not to tell. Kids have nightmares all the time." But Melanie made a note anyway, and she started locking every bedroom door at night. The next day, Daniel, usually calm and skeptical, got spooked for the first time that he was in the garage when he noticed something strange. The ladder was leaning against the far wall, even though he hadn't used it in days. And worse, the attic door above it was open, just a crack. When he climbed up to check, nothing was there. No raccoon, no wiring problem, no damage, just dust, and a tiny, child-sized handprint on the plywood floor. According to Melanie's last entry in the notebook, dated March 27th, they both decided it was time to call a security company that same week. They had 4 cameras installed. One in the living room, one at the front door, one covering the back patio, one in the upstairs hallway, motion activated. Infrared capable. Cloud synced. They wanted peace of mind, but it was already too late. April 2nd, the final day, Sunday, April 2nd, 2017, was completely ordinary. That was the scariest part. The Duvals went to church in the morning. Melanie wore a navy blue dress. Daniel wore his usual pressed khakis. Emma brought her sketchbook and drew in the back row. According to multiple members of the congregation, the family appeared calm. Caleb had grass stains on his shoes from playing outside. Melanie talked to another mother about the upcoming spring festival. One church friend recalled Daniel joking about wanting a nap after mowing the lawn. They were fine. Or they seemed that way. After church, the Duvals stopped at Kroger Security. Footage captured them at 1:22 p.m. 4 people pushing a cart, smiling. Caleb begged for chocolate milk. Melanie gave it. Daniel paid in cash. They arrived home at 1:54 p.m. According to the timestamp from their front door camera. That footage, reviewed later by police, shows all 4 walking in.N01 following. No sign of anything wrong. Just a normal Sunday afternoon. What we now know, based on a recovered digital log from their smart home system, is that between 2 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., the Duvals didn't leave the house again. They were inside, together, for more than 7 hours. The family ordered pizza around 5:15 p.m. Delivery driver confirmed drop-off. Caleb watched an episode of Paw Patrol around 6 p.m. Based on app history, Emma logged into her school Chromebook at 7:08 p.m. to finish a spelling worksheet. At 8:12 p.m., Melanie texted her sister, "All quiet here. Going to bed early." Daniel set the house alarm system at 9:41 p.m., then silence. Here's where it gets strange. The back patio camera, installed just days earlier, suddenly went offline at 11:17 p.m. Not disconnected, not glitched, disabled. Forensic analysis showed it had been physically tampered with, which means that someone had to be outside the house between 9:41 and 11:17 p.m. and they knew exactly where to go. That camera's wiring was inside a sealed outdoor panel. N01 without prior knowledge could have disabled it so cleanly. That, investigators later said, was the first proof of premeditation. Inside the house, the Duvals were likely asleep by midnight. The home alarm system, synced to their phones, registered no interior activity from 10:00 p.m. to 2:46 a.m. Then, everything changed at 2:47 a.m. The living room camera activated, motion detected. The grainy footage showed a shadow passing through the frame. Police would later call this the critical moment. It was the only time the intruder was caught on camera, and even then, only barely. The murders, 27 minutes of horror. What happened inside the Duval house between 2:47 a.m. and 3:14 a.m. is still considered one of the most disturbing and chillingly precise mass killings ever caught on partial home security footage. But the most horrifying detail, not a single camera captured the killer's face. What they did capture was worse. At 2:47 a.m., motion was detected in the living room. The hallway camera, placed at the top of the stairs, activated exactly 22 seconds later. The first thing visible was nothing, just the hallway. Then, a faint shape, someone stepping into view, only partially visible. Black pants, gloved hand, no face. Investigators later confirmed. The person had disabled the upstairs hallway light manually. Whoever it was knew the layout of the home. At 2:49 a.m., the sensor on the master bedroom door was triggered. This moment was not caught on video, only audio. The system, synced to cloud audio logs, captured 6 seconds of sound before going offline. You can hear a door opening, Daniel gasping. What the H? A single thud. Melanie screaming, then silence. The next visual recording occurs at 2:55 a.m. in the hallway. The same gloved figure reappears, this time holding what appeared to be a blunt object, possibly a tire iron or small crowbar. They moved toward Emma's room. The camera caught. The moment the door opened, a thin hand reaches inside, slowly, then disappears. No audio, but moments later, the camera shook. Emma's bedroom door slammed violently, followed by a second door, Caleb's, swinging open at 3:01, and the rest movement. A fast blur. The killer is seen dragging something, or someone, across the hallway floor. Then the system freezes. 3:03 a.m. cloud upload ends. Signal cut. By the time authorities reviewed the footage days later, it was clear the killer had not only moved between all 4 bedrooms in less than 15 minutes, but had also disabled the security system before leaving. There was no sign of forced entry, no broken glass, no pry doors. The house alarm never went off. The killer knew the code. Or never needed it. When the Duvalls were found the next morning, all 4 had been bludgeoned. There were no gunshots, no knife wounds, just blunt force trauma. Calculated, controlled, and efficient. Daniel and Melanie were found in bed, Caleb in his sleeping bag on the floor. Emma had tried to run. Her body was found near the door. Her hand was clutching her sketchbook. Autopsies later confirmed that all 4 victims died within a 13-minute window, from the first blow to the last heartbeat, 27 minutes total, and the killer vanished. The aftermath, a crime scene without clues, at 7:48 a.m. The next morning, Monday, April 3rd, 2017, a concerned neighbor dialed 911. Her name was Karen Mullins, and she told dispatchers, "I was supposed to walk with Melanie this morning, but she's not answering. Their porch light's still on. Something's not right." Police were dispatched for a welfare check. The first responding officer arrived at 8:12 a.m. Patrolman Jacob Reyes later described the scene. Everything looked normal. The mail is still in the box. Car in the driveway. House locked. Reyes rang the doorbell 3 times. No response. T circled the house. Nothing unusual. T was about to leave, until he noticed a smear on the back patio door. At a first glance, it looked like a child's handprint, but closer inspection revealed a reddish-brown streak, blood. Reyes called for backup and breached the rear entrance at 8:26 a.m. The Duval home was declared a potential homicide scene. Within 10 minutes, 3 more officers and 2 EMS units arrived, but it was already too late. Inside, the house was quiet. The bedrooms, undisturbed except for what happened inside them. The Duvalls had all died in their sleep, or nearly asleep. There were no signs of struggle in or forced entry. No alarms triggered. The only damage was internal, blunt trauma to the skull. Daniel and Melanie were still under the covers. Caleb's blanket had been tucked back and around him. Killer had cleaned up. Not cleaned everything, just enough. Enough to make police wonder, was this a professional hit? Or someone close, covering their tracks? Forensics began collecting evidence immediately, but what they found was almost nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA not belonging to the family, no boot prints on the floor. The security system had been wiped. Cloud upload stopped at 3:03 a.m., and the internal backup drive, a 500-gigabyte flash-based unit under the stairwell, had been physically removed. The only remaining footage came from a second cloud sync app Melanie had set up as a test weeks earlier. That's the footage that gave investigators the vague shadow. Without it, they'd have had nothing. The front and rear locks showed no sign. The keypad alarm was deactivated using the correct passcode. There were no foreign gears, no dropped weapons, no blood trails. Crime scene detectives thought that it was like the killer floated in, did the job, and vanished. Detectives had to make the calls no one ever wants to make. Melanie's sister, Lisa. Daniel's parents, Emma, and Caleb's school principal, B.Y. Noon. The house was cordoned off, and local media caught wind. But police said almost nothing. Just One line in the first press briefing: "We are investigating the deaths of 4 individuals inside this residence. It is an active crime scene. No names, no suspect, no hint of what had really happened." Neighbors began leaving flowers by the afternoon. The Duvall's front yard had become a makeshift memorial. Teddy bears, candles, crosses, posters. One sign simply read, "Who would do this?" That question still hasn't been answered. Suspects, secrets, and the problem with motive. Within 48 hours of discovering the Duvall family murdered in their own home, detectives were swimming in silence at a quadruple homicide. No leads. No physical evidence. No signs of forced entry. The house hadn't been robbed. Nothing was taken, except a life for lives. So they asked the obvious question: who would want the Duvalls dead? And more importantly, who had access? 1. Family connections. Detectives started close to home. Daniel's brother, Evan Duvall, was the first person interviewed. They had a rocky past, a business partnership gone bad in 2012. But Evan lived 3 states away. He had a rock-solid alibi. Time-stamped surveillance from a hotel in Denver, witnesses at a conference, even time-stamped flight records from the night before the murders. He was cleared. Then there was Melanie's sister, Lisa, who lived just 2 miles away. She admitted she hadn't spoken to Melanie in over a week. They'd argued over how to care for their aging father. But again, airtight alibi. She was on a night shift at the hospital, logged in via keycard and security cams all night. Cleared. 2. The housekeeper theory. Next was the housekeeper, Adriana Campos. She'd worked with the Duvalls for 3 years. She had keys to the house. And more importantly, she knew the alarm code. Adriana told police she hadn't seen the family in 6 days. They'd gone off routine for spring break. She broke down during questioning. "They were so good to me. I would never. I loved those kids like my own." Her car was searched. Her home was inspected. No signs of blood. No motive. She was cleared. 3. The unreported neighbor sighting. But then came something unexpected. A neighbor, 72-year-old Jerry Coughlin, came forward 3 days after the murders. He said he'd seen a tall man in dark clothing standing near the Duvall's back fence at 2 a.m. just a few nights prior. Jerry had assumed it was Daniel. When asked why he didn't report it sooner, he said, "I didn't think it meant anything until I heard about the murders." Police canvassed the area. Doorbell cameras? Nothing. Streetlight footage? Too dark. No one else saw the man. No footprints near the fence. But Jerry described him clearly. Maybe 6 feet 3 inches, moving slowly, like he was pacing. Face covered. Was it the killer? Or someone casing the house? 4. The former employee. A week later, detectives got their first real suspect. A former tech contractor for Daniel's company named Cody Brent, fired in December after he was caught stealing data and threatening co-workers. He'd been known to lash out, and he blamed Daniel for ruining his life. He also had a history of breaking into homes, 2 charges from 2013. But most alarming? Cody had once installed a smart home system in the Duvall's residence. Years before that, he knew the layout. He knew the hardware, and investigators discovered a deleted Reddit account under Cody's name, where he'd posted in forums like r/how-to-disappear, r/pro-revenge, r/home security hacks. Detectives brought him in. He denied everything. His alibi? He was on a night fishing trip with his brother-in-law. No witnesses, no photos. But there was no blood on his car. No DNA. They searched for his home, found dozens of tech gadgets, surveillance tools, but nothing tying him to the crime scene. And, without physical evidence, they couldn't hold him. Cody Brent walked free. 5. The school incident. On April 18th, investigators followed up on a strange tip that a teacher from Caleb's elementary school mentioned an odd conversation from 2 weeks before the murder. Caleb had drawn a picture of his house. That eye in the corner was a shadowy figure. When the teacher asked about it, Caleb allegedly said, "That's the man who watches us at night." Another teacher claimed Emma had recently become withdrawn, refusing to stay in her room alone and asking to take her sketchbook to bed. Was it paranoia? Or had the kids sensed something long before the adults ever knew? Analysis. No motive, no suspect, no closure. Despite weeks of digging, police were left with a house with no signs of forced entry, a smart system expertly wiped, a family with no known enemies and no clear motive. Was it personal? Was it random? Was it someone hiding in plain sight? The Duval family was gone. The neighborhood was shaken, and the killer, if still alive, had just gotten away. With the perfect murder. The town turns cold. Conspiracies and online obsession. The Duval family funeral was held on April 22nd, 2017. 4 caskets. 2 of them were heartbreakingly small. Hundreds attended the service, school teachers, neighbors, church members. The pastor simply said, "There are no words for something like this. Only silence and questions." But that silence didn't last long. Because by the end of April, just 3 weeks after the murders, the town began to turn on itself. The online sleuth swarm. The case made local headlines, then the regional ones, then national. And once the story hit Reddit, the online detectives came r/unresolved mysteries. r/true crime discussion. 1 thread reached 30,000 comments in 48 hours. Everyone had a theory. It was the husband's secret life. Melanie was involved in something dark. The kids had seen something they shouldn't have. One user posted a full map of the Duval home based on Google Earth images and real estate records. Others claimed they'd enhanced the grainy surveillance frame and saw 2 shadows, not one. Most of it was baseless, but some theories got under the skin of those who knew the family best. Lisa, the sister, falsely accused. A particularly cruel theory accused Melanie's sister, Lisa, of staging the murder. The viral TikTok made by a so-called body language expert analyzed her short press interview that IT claimed Lisa showed signs of deception. That clip got over 6 million views. Lisa received dozens of death threats. Her work put her on temporary leave. In an email to local reporters, she wrote, "People are dissecting my grief like it's a performance. My sister is gone. My niece and nephew are gone. What else do you want?" Police publicly stated she was not a suspect, but the damage was already done. The hack in the Dropbox leak. In late May, an anonymous tipster emailed 3 YouTubers claiming they had access to a private Dropbox folder containing files from Daniel Duval's company. The tipster said, "Look there. That's where the motive is." The files were never verified, but that didn't stop creators from running with it. Videos popped up titled, "Did Daniel know something he shouldn't?" Was the Duval father about to expose a secret? In reality, the files contained nothing damning, just standard internal memos, NDAs, and legal contracts. But the seed was planted. The police go silent. By June 2017, the police had made no arrests. No updates. In a short press conference, the lead investigator simply said, "We're pursuing all leads. We asked the public to refrain from speculation that could hinder the investigation." But the public was tired of waiting. The media coverage faded. The flowers on the Duval's lawn wilted, and the case quietly went cold. Community fractures. Fear sets in Park Haven Ridge. Fear turned into suspicion. Some families sold their homes, and left. 1 HOA meeting devolved into screaming when a resident accused another of knowing more than they said. Ring cameras went up on nearly every door. People started locking their bedroom doors at night. Children weren't allowed to walk to school alone anymore. Park Haven had been the safest neighborhood in town. Now it was known for one thing: a family was murdered. Here, and nobody knows why. Obsession turns dark, but the internet didn't move on. A YouTuber using the pseudonym Murder Witness claimed he had new footage of the killer. It was a hoax. He'd used AI to simulate the home security cam clip. His video racked up 2.8 million views before being removed. Another user impersonated Daniel Duval's coworker and posted a fabricated confession online. These were deliberate lies, and they only deepened the trauma for surviving family members. One of Emma's classmates was harassed online after her school photo appeared in a conspiracy thread about a 9-year-old child, targeted for knowing a victim. The last thing Melanie posted, Melanie's last public post on Facebook, was a photo of Caleb's science project, a papier-mâché volcano. Her caption said, "He's so proud. He made it erupt right on cue." That post, now frozen in time, became a digital memorial. Hundreds of strangers flooded the comments with condolences, but beneath them, accusations, theories, gifs. The internet didn't know how to mourn, only how to consume. When a crime isn't solved, it doesn't just disappear. It seeps into the cracks in the walls of the homes nearby, in the whispers at school pickup, and online, It becomes fuel for the worst parts of human curiosity. The Duval family was murdered, but in the months that followed, their memory was violated too. 2 years later, an unexpected breakthrough. For over 2 years, the Duval family murders sat in silence, and no arrests. No persons of interest publicly named. No new press conferences. But in June 2019, something changed. Something small. Something that wasn't supposed to be noticed, but it was. A database. Quietly updated, a user on Web Sleuths noticed that the FBI's VICAP database had been updated. A new entry, cross-referencing a double homicide in Montana with an unsolved family killing involving home surveillance footage. The details were vague, as they always are in VICAP, but to the online sleuths who had obsessed over the Duval case, it looked familiar. A married couple, shot in their bedroom, same caliber weapon, late-night intrusion, home security disabled. That case had also never been solved. The two families had no obvious connection. But what stood out, the Montana murder, had occurred just 2 weeks before the Duval family was killed. A pattern emerges. Over the next few months, online communities began digging deeper. They found 3 other cases with striking similarities. A family of 3 in Oregon, found shot in their farmhouse in 2016, that a couple in Pennsylvania killed while asleep. 2015, a rancher and his wife in New Mexico. 2014 in every instance. No sign of forced entry. Surveillance footage is either missing, wiped, or mysteriously disabled. The murder weapon was never found. And in every case, no arrests were ever made. FBI task force formation. By late 2019, the FBI formed a multi-jurisdictional task force to investigate the possibility of a serial offender targeting families. They gave the case a name, Operation Quiet Night. Details were scarce, but what leaked to the press was chilling. One agent described the suspect as highly organized, methodical, likely trained, possibly military or law enforcement background, and perhaps most disturbing, we believe he stalked families for weeks before striking. Daniel Duval's company again in focus. In January 2020, Daniel Duval's employer, Navisinks, was quietly subpoenaed. Investigators wanted access to his client logs, secure communications travel records. It turned out that Daniel had been consulting on a data security project involving third-party surveillance infrastructure, specifically doorbell and smart home camera software, the same systems that had captured and somehow failed to fully record the night of the murder. Was it a coincidence? Or had someone been watching Daniel long before April 2nd? The tech lead whistleblower. In August 2020, a former Navisinks technical lead came forward under the condition of anonymity that he told investigators that internal data logs showed unusual access to Daniel Duval's device the night before the murders, access that couldn't be traced to Daniel. Access that came from outside the U.S. The whistleblower's statement triggered a full forensic analysis by the FBI Cyber Division, and for the first time in over 3 years, the Duval case had movement again. The ghost in the Wi-Fi. According to FBI findings, the Duval home router had a temporary remote connection logged at 11:42 p.m., just 14 minutes before the murders. That connection lasted only 3 minutes. It accessed the following devices: the security camera app, the smart lock, and a cloud sync folder connected to Melanie's phone. Then it vanished. The intruder hadn't just broken in, he'd unlocked the door from the outside using their own tech and wiped the recordings in real time. The lost package theory. During that same week, Melanie had posted in a neighborhood forum that a package had been stolen off their porch. Nothing unusual, right? Except the package wasn't from Amazon. It was from a private supplier connected to Daniel's company. The contents were never publicly revealed, but one source close to the case told reporters it may have contained a prototype. Was it corporate espionage? Was Daniel targeted because of what he knew or what he had? Or was this just another dead end in a case full of them? 2 years after their deaths, the world seemed to be waking back up to the Duval family, not just as victims, but as part of something larger. A possible pattern of family killings stretching across the country. And yet, despite the task forces, the cyber analysis, the whistleblowers, nobody has been arrested. The person who executed the Duvals is still out there, watching, waiting. Or maybe they've already done it again. The surveillance killer, was he in other homes too? when the FBI began linking the Duval family murders to other unsolved cases. A terrifying theory started to emerge. What if this wasn't just a series of random break-ins? What if the killer wasn't forcing his way in at all? What if he'd already been inside, watching for weeks? The insider access theory, the Duval home, like many others, had been outfitted with the latest smart home tech: indoor security cameras, smart locks, motion sensors, cloud storage, designed to protect, but in the wrong hands, they became tools for a killer. The FBI cyber unit revealed that in all 5 suspected linked cases, the victims' security systems had at least one remote access vulnerability, meaning someone with enough knowledge could slip in and never need to force a door. Profile of a monster. The profiler assigned to Operation Quiet Night painted a disturbing picture. Likely male, late 30s to 50s, extremely tech-savvy, deep understanding of surveillance software, possibly works in IT, cybersecurity, or law enforcement. Emotionally detached, no signs of financial motive. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about rage. This was control. And if that profile was accurate, the Duvals weren't his only targets. They were just one of the few caught on camera. Digital footprints in obscure places. FBI digital forensic experts discovered traces of code inside the Duval family's security logs, code that didn't match any known software. IT appeared to be custom scripted, designed to activate at specific times and wipe itself after execution. A self-deleting ghost. This wasn't a burglary. This was someone executing an operation, down to the minute. The case of the Cook family. 2018. In 2018, the Cook family was murdered in their Virginia home. Parents and 2 children, no sign of forced entry. The home's Wi-Fi logs showed a brief spike in traffic at 2:03 a.m., unusual for that household. The indoor cameras, previously recording daily, showed nothing from 1:58 a.m. onward. IT was like the house, blinked for 6 minutes, then it came back online. The family was found shot in their beds. Reused tech? Or the same killer? The smart security system used by the Cook family, the same brand, was used by the Duvals. Investigators cross-checked firmware vulnerabilities and found that both had not updated their cloud-based security protocols in over 18 months, meaning they were exposed. Same kill signature, same timing, same silence. The return of the man in the hood. And then there was this point 2 blocks away from the Cooks, just 10 days earlier. A neighbor's doorbell cam caught a man in a hooded jacket, standing on a corner at 3:12 a.m., not moving, just watching. The video was grainy, but the figure bore the same body type, posture, and clothing as the one seen outside the Duval home. IT couldn't be confirmed, but it was uncanny. DNA? Not quite. Despite all the digital leads, all the video, all the cyber forensic breadcrumbs, the killer left no usable DNA, no fingerprints, no hair, no saliva. Even the bullets retrieved in each case had no rifling marks. Experts believe the weapon used was customized or fitted with a barrel designed to avoid identification. This wasn't a spree killer. This was someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The uncomfortable question. By early 2021, a new theory gained quiet momentum inside law enforcement circles, not officially released, but whispered. What if the killer isn't a stranger to this industry? What if he's still working in the cybersecurity field? Or worse, what if he's one of us? The family that knew too much. New theories and cover-up claims. As the years passed and no arrests were made, a different kind of narrative began to emerge, not from the FBI, not from the media, but from online forums, family friends, and one anonymous whistleblower. A theory that chilled even the most hardened investigators. What if the Duvals weren't just victims? What if they were silenced? A sudden obsession with privacy. 3 months before their murder, Melissa Duval had told a friend she was concerned someone was listening in through their devices. Not just spying, but recording. She stopped using voice assistants. She unplugged the smart TV when not in use. She even placed tape over webcams, including the baby-monitored the time. Everyone thought it was just new mom paranoia, but now it reads more like a warning. A woman realizing they were being watched from inside. Who was Chris working for? Chris Duval was a mid-level IT engineer, but his last contract raised serious questions. through a third-party cybersecurity firm. He had reportedly been consulting for a private defense contractor, one with deep ties to government surveillance. He never mentioned the company by name. Not to friends, not to family, but a former co-worker told reporters that in the months before his death, Chris had become jittery, often checking over his shoulder and once saying, "If anything happens to me, don't believe it was random." That was 2 weeks before the murder. The encrypted hard drive that vanished during the initial search of the Duval home. Officers documented a fireproof lockbox in Chris's home office. Inside, 2 USB drives, an encrypted 4 terabytes hard drive, a burner phone. According to the evidence log, the drive was bagged and labeled, but when the FBI returned weeks later to process cyber evidence, it was gone. No chain of custody, no explanation, no replacement listed. Just a redacted paragraph in the final report. A whistleblower steps forward. In late 2022, an anonymous whistleblower contacted a podcast that had covered the Duval case extensively. Using voice distortion software, they claimed to be a former employee of the third-party contractor Chris worked with, and what they said was chilling. Chris accessed something he shouldn't have. A project. Something that wasn't meant to exist outside the black site servers. When asked if that something had to do with the surveillance of American citizens, the whistleblower went silent, then ended the call. A pattern of death? Online sleuths quickly noticed a strange pattern. 2 other contractors who had worked at the same firm as Chris died under similarly unexplained circumstances. One in a staged home fire, one in a single-car accident on a rural highway. Both were within 14 months of the Duval murders. Neither case resulted in arrests. Neither case made national news. And in both, digital devices were either missing or destroyed. Coincidence? Or a cleanup? Algorithms that predict and pray. Some theorists took things even further. What if the system Chris discovered wasn't just about surveillance, but behavioral prediction? Imagine this, a shadow program, pulling smart home data from millions of devices, learning patterns, anticipating movements, and eventually exploiting them. Predict when a family sleeps, predict when cameras stop, predict when no one's watching, and then strike. Officially denied. When asked to comment on these theories, the Department of Defense said, "We are unaware of any such project, and no connection has been found between the Duval family's deaths and any defense contractor or federal initiative." The FBI declined further comment. N01 would say the name of the contractor. N01 would touch the drive that vanished. And no one could explain why a seemingly normal suburban family was eliminated. With military-like precision. Where does the truth end? Maybe Chris never saw anything dangerous. Maybe Melissa wasn't paranoid. Maybe this was all just terrible coincidence. But if that's true, why did every lead dry up? Why has the killer never been caught? And why does everything, from the cameras to the footage to the tech, feel like a script someone's trying to erase? The footage they didn't show us, what the public never saw, the world saw 12 seconds. That was all the police released at a single clip, grainy, black and white, showing a man in a hood walking toward a quiet house in the dead of night. But that wasn't the only footage. Behind closed doors, investigators saw much more. Footage that the public never saw, and maybe for good reason. Inside the nursery, one of the most chilling details in the case file, referenced in sealed court documents, was something buried in the footage from camera 3, the nursery. This camera, mounted above baby Harper's crib, recorded on a 3-second delay. The police logs mention footage captured at 2:04 and 17 seconds a.m., just 13 minutes before the motion detectors on the front door were triggered. What did they see? A figure standing motionless in the doorway. No entry recorded. No sound, just standing, and then slowly turning back into the hallway. Baby Harper never woke up, and neither did her parents. Audio stripped from camera 5-inch. Camera 5, facing the stairwell, should have captured audio, but police redacted the entire sound track. According to leaked files, the original footage contained 30 seconds of whispered conversation. 2 voices, 1 whispering. "Are you sure this is it?" Then silence and footsteps. The official line? The audio was inconclusive, but analysts who reviewed the original claimed something far more disturbing. The second voice was Melissa's. The living room motion event, the living room. Camera 1 showed a motion trigger at exactly 2:16 a.m. But here's the strange part. The figure was already in the room. No entry was captured, no shadow crossing the door, just a flicker. And then he's standing behind the couch as if he'd been there for hours. The footage skips again at 2:17:04, then resumes with the figure walking calmly to the staircase. No rush. No panic, just certainty. The killer wears gloves. But left a message in every frame. The intruder wears gloves, his face hidden, his steps deliberate. But here's what one detective claims they found, never released to the press. A message, written in steam on the bathroom mirror. It was short, just 4 words. I was never here. No prints, no DNA, no smudge trails. From a finger, like the message had written itself. The suppressed hard drive. Remember the encrypted hard drive that vanished from Chris Duvall's office? Months later, a leaked FBI memo referenced a suppressed external device with visual documentation not fit for civilian release. Translation? It had something they didn't want the public to see. One investigator, who later quit the bureau, reportedly told a journalist. The footage from that drive made everything else look like a rehearsal. This wasn't random. This was practice. Did the Duvalls know? More and more, it seemed the Duvalls weren't simply victims, but participants in something they didn't fully understand. Chris's encrypted messages, Melissa's growing fear, their decision to turn off cameras during the day, to keep the nursery's light on at night, the way all 3 bedrooms were locked from the inside. They knew, or at least they suspected, and the killer knew they knew. One final frame, the final frame, recovered from camera 7, facing the front lawn, is timestamped 2:31 a.m. It shows the killer walking calmly down the driveway. A faint light flickers behind him. No blood. No urgency. He pauses. He looks at the doorbell cam as if he knows it is recording, and smiles. A small, tight-lipped grin, and then he vanishes into the dark. No arrests. No suspects. And no answers. Years have passed. Leads have gone cold. Surveillance systems have improved. But still, no arrests. No named suspect. No justice. The footage remains sealed. The killer remains free. And somewhere tonight, another house blinks in the dark. They say the camera never lies. But in this case, it watched every moment. And still, it hasn't told us the truth. The Duvall family is gone. Their home now stands silent. The evidence, buried in bureaucracy. The footage, sealed, away from the public. And the one person who could answer everything still walks free. Some say justice moves slowly. But how slow? Before it forgets altogether. If you know something, if someone said something, don't wait another year. Call your local cold case division. Because stories like this one aren't just forgotten. They're erased. Thank you for watching. At True Crime Story File Gist. We uncover the darkest true stories every week. Cases that the headlines forgot, but families never did. Hence, if this story disturbed you, kindly subscribe and turn on your notifications button and stay with us as we expose more stories that were never meant to be told. Because the truth should never stay buried.